You're listening to the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 62, Stories for Your Younger Self with Julian Hosp. Once upon a time.
Writing a book. It can be the best way to build or grow your business, or to simply tell the story that you wish to tell. Learn how to write your book in 30 days or less. Pick up 30-Day Author today from Amazon, Apple iBooks, or other online retailers.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented Pants Optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger. Thanks so much for tuning in again. I really appreciate that you come back every week. I come back every week, and I come back to see you, so I appreciate that you come back to see me. So this week we are talking to somebody. Now, I want to preface this by saying I recorded this interview just after Thanksgiving, so you're going to hear me say that in the interview. And it is now this show will go live the second Friday of January in the new year, and that would be 2016 if you're listening in the distant future. But I'm interviewing Julian Hosp, and he's a character. He's inspiring actually. I mean, he did something quite remarkable with his life, which was to leave a field that everyone thinks of as being very stable and lucrative, and to pursue his passion. And sometimes that works out. So I'm glad it worked out for Julian. I can't wait for you to hear the interview. Some quick housekeeping stuff. I just wanted to let you know that right now you can actually pick up my book 30-Day Author for a discounted 99 cents on any online retailer. So now this all started because Kobo is running a New Year, New You promotion, and they asked if they could feature 30-Day Author in that, along also with friend of show Justin Sloan's book, Creative Writing Career. Both of those are being featured in the Kobo promotion, but I went ahead and extended that to all online platforms. So from now until January 11th, you can pick up a digital copy of 30-Day Author anywhere you like online. You can actually get that for 99 cents. And then after the 11th, it pops back up to $4.99. So this is a good time to check it out if you've ever been interested in writing a book. This book will work for anyone because it's about developing a daily writing habit. But it's largely, I really intended it for the entrepreneur who wants to write a book as a sort of ultimate business card, as a sort of extended mission statement, or, they just have ideas. They just always wanted to write a book. You've got lots of reasons, and I wanted to give you some tools for doing that. But if you are a fiction author, you can also get a lot out of this book. One of the things I kind of touch on briefly, I don't really go into huge detail, but you can actually pick up a few tips about marketing your work as well. So if you are an indie author, there are some resources in there for you. It's really all about developing a daily writing habit. So this works for anyone. I hope that you would be interested. But I think that the entrepreneurs in the group are going to be particularly interested. So go check that out. And 99 cents until January 11th. So let me know what you think too. If you pick that up, I'd love to hear from you. You can actually go and find all the links to that book online at kevintomlinson.com/30-day author, and that's with no dashes. That's all one word, 30-day author. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So beyond that, I'm going to let you slip right into this interview with Julian Hosp. He's the author of 25 Stories I Would Tell My Younger Self. And, we're kind of at a reflection point in the year. So this is a good time to sort of rethink, like, what would you have done differently? And what advice would you give yourself if you could go back? And if you've got that great advice for your younger self, maybe you should start following it now. There's a revolutionary thought. So take a listen to this interview with Julian Hosp. Stick around after the show for the wrap-up, and we'll see you on the other side. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in for another week of Word Slinger fun, and we're coming off of a Thanksgiving high here in the U.S., but our guest doesn't have to deal with that. Well, I don't know. Did you do anything Thanksgiving related? I don't imagine you would, Julian. We're talking, by the way, to Julian Hosp, who's the author of 25 Stories. Sorry about that. I didn't introduce you before I started firing questions your way.
That's fine. Hey, Kevin. No, well, here in Hong Kong, we didn't celebrate Thanksgiving, so...
Yeah, I didn't imagine.
Yeah.
So, but as I mentioned, Julian is the author of 25 Stories, which we'll get into. We'll talk a bit about. He left his home in Austria at the age of 16 to move to the U.S., and he became a professional kite surfer, traveling the world for 10 years. That's interesting. Julian, that's very. I want to talk about kite surfing, during which he also studied medicine. And he worked as a medical doctor, but soon quit to start his own business. So, and now you're a number 1 Amazon bestseller. That's kind of cool. How'd you get to that point?
Well, thanks. Well, I think it was just. It was just the perfect start of this year, and it was a summary of what has happened over the last. Not entire 29 years when I'm old, but maybe from the time when I was 4 or 5 years old. I think, well, along the way, there were many decisions where people said, oh my gosh, this is just so stupid what you're doing. And looking backwards, these points, they just connected, the dots connected perfectly.
Right.
That's how the book got together.
So tell me about the dots. What dots were you connecting that brought all this around?
I think the first dot that was, to me, really important was going to the US. And just as you mentioned, I think... back then I was 16. Many people back then it was not so popular that you would just go into another country, that you would become an exchange student, and I just organized all that by myself. I really wanted to leave my home. I felt a bit locked in, and I just wanted to experience something new. It cost me a lot of money to do all that simply because I really had to do it all by myself. And there was many people back then who said, "Why are you doing this? You're just wasting money. You're just going to be cut off from all your friends and family. You're going to be homesick. You want to come back." That's the time, right? When there was no Facebook, there was
right.
there was no Skype, there was no. To call home. I called my parents once a month because it was so expensive, right?
Yeah.
There was still letter time. I was sending letters literally. So that was So that was one of the first thoughts. But at the end, that was one of the most important experiences in my life.
Yeah. So, okay, tell us a little bit about 25 Stories. Like, it's 25 Stories I would tell my younger self, by the way. I keep shortening it, but that's the full title, right?
It is 25 stories that happened really chronologically through my life. The very early stories, they're about my complete childhood, and I think they're really necessary for the reader to understand why I turned out the way I turned out. And what is important about the stories is none of these stories are necessarily related directly to me. They are stories that all of us experience, I think, and some more, some less. For example, I had a mom who was really strict on me, and she was ruthless when it came to me doing certain tasks and having to continue with certain things, even though I didn't want to do that. And I think, one of us, or some of us have a dad who's really strict. Some of us have a mom that's really strict. So I think many people can identify themselves with that.
And so, what are some of the stories in the book? How's it structured?
Especially the first couple of stories where with my mom, when it starts off with the ice cream story where my mom doesn't give me. We go to the swimming pool. All my friends get stuff. They just get like an ice cream. They get a treat and so on. My mom always put a challenge to that. So she said, "Okay, if you want to have an ice cream, well, swim 10 times back and forth." And
okay.
I couldn't believe it. All the other kids had ice cream, and I was the little kid having to jump into the pool swimming. And it was just her way of teaching me that nothing in life is free. You have to work in order to get something in return. You have to give to get.
Yeah.
And so these were the values.
So did that, you feel, shape like your life to come? Did it, you drew upon that experience, obviously. So that was that a big part of developing the self-discipline to be, a doctor and a kite surfer and all the things that you've become?
Hugely. I would never go out and ever complain that I'm not getting something that I wish I would get, because I would always have the opinion, okay, I probably didn't try hard enough. I probably didn't give it all I could have given it. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the kind of attitude that she brought me up. And I think that goes into when I studied medicine and I knew, okay, if I want to combine medicine with kite surfing, which was something everybody said this is not going to be possible, I knew I just had to give it. I had to give it all. I had to work so hard, and well, I made it to work because of that. And I think it comes from that time with my mom.
Right. So a lot of people would say, I mean, you went into medicine. A lot of people think of that as a very lucrative field. You know, that's a goal for a lot of people, is to get into that field so that they can, I don't know, they can have the kind of life they think that comes with that. But you've basically taken a turn from that. So what made you decide that medicine wasn't really your field?
Yeah, I mean, that was a question that was one of those points, right? When you are at this situation, and I still remember I graduated from med school and I had this great job becoming my dream was always to become a traumatologist, a surgeon. And I had my job and I knew exactly I was going to start to work. And suddenly I had this feeling, if I do this now, I'm going to be locked up. And I went to my parents. I was 24 back then. I mean, I felt like crying. My mom was crying. She was disappointed in me. And she said that she could never imagine her son being this kind of person, right? That kind of person who, drops out or stops something. I mean, I didn't drop out of college, but I mean, I didn't do it, right? And at the end, looking back, it was the best decision I could have made. But at that point, it was one of the hardest things that I don't know that I could have ever undergone in my life.
I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
going against the odds, going against so many people's opinion, going against the mainstream, going against what's common sense, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of the inspirations for the book, because I think, and that was one of my key drivers today. I have so many people that I feel they are in similar situations that I've been in, but they think that they are so unique in these situations. They suddenly get this huge wave of resistance, and they stand there and they're like, everybody tells me I shouldn't do it. Okay, probably they are right. It's so unique in this. And then they don't do it, right? And so if they hear about other stories where they're like, oh my gosh, there are actually people who have done these crazy things. You know what? I'm going to push through with this.
Yeah.
And that was my main intention for writing those 25 stories. So maybe there's a parent who has a kid and wants to teach that kid a lesson and wants to make sure the kid understands the you have to give to get. And all the other parents were like the other parents laughing at my mom. But this parent reads my book and is like, yeah, right. This mom did this. And I mean, maybe there were a lot of other factors, but this kid turned out fine. So you know what? I'm going to do it too.
Yeah.
That is my intention for the entire book.
So, okay, we all, those of us who are in any sort of career that might be considered unconventional, I mean, we all face those hecklers, I guess, or the naysayers who tell us, this is crazy, you should think about something else, or you should, stick to the path you're on. Like, how do you deal with that sort of feedback from people? Like, how do you work past it?
I think, and I mean, to me, that was one of the hardest things that I have ever experienced, and I still struggle with this. So I think one of the key messages is that I still haven't found a proper way how to deal with it, to be fair and square. I mean, I give you a quick example. My book came out, it shot up to #1, and 2 days later I had like a 2-star rating, laughing how crappy my book was and that I should never ever be an author and this is the crappiest book the person's ever read. To me, I felt so insulted. I wanted to immediately write a comment and tell that person why this person is insulting me on there and why is this, whatever. Right. And I mean, even today, I haven't managed to really find the proper strategy. So to me, it is just always that I step back a bit, and then I look at the entire situation and I say, okay, what is the best thing in my interest right now? Is that person who's telling me that what I'm about to do, that this is stupid, is that person judging me from a perspective that is in my interest, or is that person just judging me to make fun of me, or is that person judging me out of an objective way?
Right.
And what I just have learned is that I really try to listen to people where I know, and I deeply know that they want the best for me, and they don't just want the best for me because they are close to me like my parents, but they really want the best for me because they are neutral, maybe even mentors, maybe people who really want you to grow because either they are business partners or because they are people that have this neutral perspective. And I had a mentor when I was 23 years old. His name is Paul. I talk about it for an entire chapter in my book and how big of an influence he had on me.
And how did you find your mentor? A lot of people ask about that sort of thing.
I write about that actually. And one of the key things, I think mentors are everywhere. And there's many people who want to give back to someone else. I think the biggest challenge with someone finding a mentor is accepting that a good mentor has to be mentoring you. And that is one of the key points, because my mentor, he told me things that I didn't want to hear. Yeah. I didn't like to hear those things. He was the one telling me that I'm thinking small. He was telling me that I'm not living up to my potential. He told me all those things. And these were things I didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
And then there's the question, are you really reflecting? Are you thinking about, do these things make sense? Why is he telling you those things?
Right.
Or are you just chicking it out and saying, you know what? Nah, he's just trying to make fun of me. And then these people get frustrated because, I mean, what does a mentor want? They want to mentor you. They want to support you. So if you don't want to do this, if you're not open to that, the person's probably going to step back.
Right. Yeah. The whole mentor topic, really. I mean, people struggle with that because it's difficult to find someone, and how do you approach someone to ask them if they would be your mentor? I mean, do you just naturally fall into that relationship, or do you actively go out looking for someone and saying, I want you to be my mentor?
I mean, I'm the kind of person, I reach out to anyone. I mean, I'm not kidding, right? I reached out to Elon Musk for my book. I reached out to Richard Branson for my book. I reached out to Marie Follier. I reached out to anyone. To me, it's like, what is the worst thing these people can do, right? The worst thing is maybe they don't reply, or maybe they tell me, they write me, no, I'm not interested, whatever, right? So to me, I'm this person who's super savvy and hungry. And so people feel this when I talk to them. So, and I'm also a person who, I've learned that in my life, that if I have someone that I consider successful, if that person tells me something, I really have to pay attention. And I feel that with such an attitude, I don't have to actively ask for someone to mentor me. I think I attract the person who wants to mentor me, and I automatically connect with that person. This is how it happened. I had someone from New York who was extremely successful in book publishing. Mm-hmm. And since I was a first-time author, he didn't want to work with me directly, but he felt that I was hungry, hardworking, and I wanted to make it happen. So, I mean, the things that he told me, they were so valuable, and I'm really grateful for him to help me with this.
Yeah. So do you mentor anyone right now?
It's funny. I have three companies or 3 startups that I'm mentoring. One is based out of the US. 2 are based out of Africa. That's really funny. I got connected to them. Yeah. So this is really more of a giving back. So it's nothing financial. Right. But this is one of the things. And here again, out of those 3 companies, one is really doing well because it's a lady. She's listening and she's hungry. Where the other 2, I always feel when I tell them something, it's not like they feel insulted, but they feel they second guess everything, or they're not sure. And at some point, I'm like, why should I do this? Why should where I know that I'm right because I walk their walk already? Right. Why should I fight against that? Right. And then I think if you are a good mentee, you're really open-minded, I feel.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be a requirement for being a good mentee, right?
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's, one of the key aspects, and I think in my book, I cover that in almost every chapter, especially in the later chapters, it's you are the average of the 5 people around you.
Yeah. And
don't kid yourself, right? You are. And if you want to become more, you have to start changing the people around you, and you have to start changing your influence. Right. I think it's easier said than done, because that means you have to start being honest to yourself, and you have to reflect, okay, who are the people around you and who would you like to have? And it starts with maybe replacing one person that you have spent so much time with. To me, back then, I replaced one of my best friends. I had to, because I realized my best friend back then did not have the same vision for his life than I had for mine. Right. And of course, we could always be best high school buddies and best buddies, but I didn't want to end up where he wanted to end up, and I wanted to end up somewhere else. And I think that's one of the hardest decisions, especially I think someone at the age 22, 23 can do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. I've talked to people about that before. Sometime back interviewed Jeff Wood, who is, he's all about mentor-mentee relationships. He said something very similar, that, we basically connect with our friends out of circumstance. So they may not necessarily be the best influence on our lives. So sometimes you got to go back and reassess and maybe even move on.
Now, I think the key for people when they listen to this, I always try to tell people the same thing. It's not that high performers can have an easier way dealing with something. I actually think high performers, they have a harder time dealing with certain things. Mm-hmm. But because it is so hard for them, they find tools and strategies and ways how they can deal with these things. So they can focus on, okay, so how can I overcome that obstacle right now? It's this typical thing where Richard Branson says, because he had a difficulty in writing, because he was struggling with reading and writing, he had to find other ways how he could bypass that. And that allowed him to be so successful in judging people and being open-minded. And I think it's maybe even the same way here.
Yeah, I think I agree. So what were some of those challenges you had to compensate for and find strategies for? What were some of your biggest ones?
Yeah, people don't believe that when they see me, because I was this professional athlete. I was in extreme sports, so I really did highly risky things, and I went always all in. But even today, I'm a very calculated risk taker. So to me, there's many times that I sit there and I'm not 100% sure if I should go with something or I should not.
Yeah.
And there was all the time this happens, just lately when I had to make a decision, and it was about, okay, are we going to stay in Hong Kong? Are we going to move somewhere else? It was these back and forth things where I think many people have these same struggles. And so to me, the tool that I developed was I started working almost like a computer, where I said, okay, if this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. If that happens, then that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And the only way how you can really execute that is if you, just like a computer, you really make certain breaks into your program, if you want to call it, where you cannot jump back anymore. Right. For me, for example, this was when I moved to Hong Kong. I said, okay, if this happens, then I'm going to stay in Hong Kong. And that thing happened. Basically, that meant that my business took off within the first 6 to 12 months. That was my rule. Then I have to stay in Hong Kong. And the only way I could do that was because I sold my apartment in Austria. I sold my car in Austria. I gave up everything in Austria. So for me, even if my business was taking off, for me, I could not just that easily go back, because basically my program to go back was kind of broken.
Right.
And I think you have to find these really straightforward ways where people, they find this, okay, how can I overcome certain challenges? And you need to work with these little tools.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious though. Why Hong Kong? What brought you to Hong Kong?
Many people ask me that. To me, I was I grew up in Europe. I went to the US when I was in high school, and then I traveled the world when I was a kite surfer. I don't even know an island or something where I haven't been. But then I've never been in a big city, and so to me, it was either I wanted to go to New York or London or Singapore or Hong Kong. And at the end, I felt like, okay, I have been to the US. New York is not necessarily the most best place to call the US, but I felt I was I had been in the US already, and London was too much New York for me. So it was more Singapore or Hong Kong. But I had been in Singapore a lot for kite surfing. So to me, the only place that I hadn't been much was Hong Kong, and I was really open-minded. And again, I was scared to go. I had to use little tricks that really made me stay and actually made me go. And that's eventually how I ended up here together with my girlfriend. She came 9 months later. And it was a total new environment. It was something that, you grow with the challenge. And it's been fabulous. It allowed me, one really great thing about Hong Kong is that making money here is, I don't know many places where you can make that much money as you can make in Hong Kong. But at the same time, where you have a very low living cost. So that means your net profit is extremely high here. And that is, I think, one of the most wonderful things here. The money I earned over the last 4 years here, it would have taken me at least 4 or 5 times as long in Europe. And that's one of the most wonderful things. So again, I didn't know that when I came here. But looking back, it was, it's a great decision. Sort
of fortuitous that you ended up in Hong Kong, of all places, then.
Yep. No, definitely. I think I think I spoke to my girlfriend about that. I said we could have ended up in 20 other places probably. And I think the key is you need to make the best out of where you are, and then looking back, you will be like, okay, it does make sense. It did make sense that we had this kind of program. Basically, that's why we ended up here.
Yeah.
So I think it's always interesting.
I like that quote that you need to make the best out of where you are. Because I'm at a point in my life where we are, in transition to a more mobile lifestyle. So, and I think a lot of people listening are kind of getting to that point, or at least contemplating it. So that's a good one. So tell me about the book itself. Like, how did you end up with number one? That's something a lot of authors want to know.
Yeah, I just did a couple of interviews exactly on that point, because to me, I mean, I have no background in writing, and many people they say, okay, you have been a first-time author. Well, what they are not mentioning is I'm by far not a first-time marketer.
Right.
I have been in marketing since I'm a professional kite surfer, because what do you have to do when you're a professional athlete? Well, golly, you have to market yourself, and you have to make sure that you get into the magazines. You have to be sure that the picture that this best shot gets taken and put on the cover of the magazine. When I started an e-commerce business here in Hong Kong 4.5 years ago, I had to go out and I had to market our app. I had to go to SMEs. I had to go to end users. I had to be sure that people were using our stuff. So to me, I think if you once understand that making a product per se is important, yes, and having a good quality of the product is also important, yes. But the most important part is, how are you going to get your book? How are you going to get your app? How are you going to get your product, your program, whatever you develop? How do you get it into the hands of the consumer?
Right.
And in my opinion, and that's what I'm the best in, is I'm just pure hustling, which means I go all in. Yes, I use the traditional stuff where I make mailing lists. Yes, we have Facebook. Yes, we have social media. Yes, we do all that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to me writing to 1,000 people, me writing to 2,000 people in person, where I would write and say, hey, Kevin, remember we made this podcast together. Hey, we just launched our next book. Hey, would you be open to take a look? It would mean the world to me.
Right.
Well, I don't know what you're going to answer, but maybe you're going to say, sure, Julian, I'm going to help you out. Or you say, no, I'm not interested, right? I mean, I don't know. So if I do this with 2,000 people, out of those 2,000 people, there are at least a couple of hundred that are going to write me back and say, wow, Julian, of course I'll help you. Of course, hey, send me a copy. I'll read through it. You know what? I'll send it out to my following.
Right.
And so that's what I've been doing over the last 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And it is hard work. And that's why most people don't do it.
Right.
But because most people don't do it, it is so highly successful. So whoever is listening to this, if you have a product and you want to make sales, and all you have been doing so far is having a great email list and having a great social media, well, why don't you go and do the unscalable thing? Go and talk to people individually. Talk to your core customers, talk to your best friends, talk to whoever you have, and do the unscalable thing. Because I believe this is actually what really drives and creates a certain momentum.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's, marketing in general is just challenging, especially for people who their ambition is to just write books. I talk to thousands of authors at this point, independent authors and traditional authors alike. And the biggest challenge is always the marketing. That idea of getting out there one-on-one, I don't even think anyone's considering that.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think that's what it comes down to. It's if you just want to write, then that's great. But then you only, in my opinion, have two options. Either you accept that you are really, really lucky that at some point, someone who has a huge network picks up your book and reads through it and has this light bulb go on and say, oh my gosh, this is the next Harry Potter book.
Yeah.
If you're that lucky, wonderful. But I don't really love the concept of luck so much. I prefer to write my own luck, right? I prefer to shuffle my own deck of cards. So I just go, and if you are this introvert that doesn't want to go out and talk to people one-on-one, well, then find someone who does and share the profit with them.
Oh,
in my opinion, it's the only way. I prefer having 10% of $1 million than 0% of nothing.
I absolutely agree with that. That is absolutely cool advice, I have to admit, because I think that is something that we don't think about. And when we start talking about marketing, it's always this idea of the burden that's on us. We never think about the idea of possibly we could find someone willing to share that burden. So that's good. I like that 10% of $1 million idea.
No, I mean, I live that because I think there's so many people that are really good in marketing who don't have a product to market. I give you a quick example. I had someone from Germany who is a TV producer and runs events, and he is really great in marketing. I mean, unbelievable marketing skills. But he really lacks this, I don't want to say knowledge. I would love to say more, he lacks this defined knowledge that he could go create a product out and get out to the market. So for him, and that was, when I became friends with him a couple of years ago, that was his major breakthrough, to go to people that have this packaged knowledge that he also understands and can identify themselves with. And then he puts out this knowledge into the world. And he always shares the profit with the people. So I'm pretty sure there's more people like that out there who would be great in marketing. And if they would partner up with people with great products, great service, great ideas, great books, great apps, whatever it is, I think this could be great symbioses. It's just always, you need to be open to that. And some authors, I think they just sit there and they're like, okay, this is my book. I wrote it. I want to keep it all. Right. Yeah, that's great. And I love that idea. But what are the odds that this is going to work? So if you don't want to do the work, you need to find someone who does it. That's
good advice. And, I never hear that advice. The only advice I ever hear is to kind of tough it out and suck it up and go do your marketing. And I think a lot of authors will appreciate that concept of, finding someone else to help out. I like it. I'm going to go do it.
No, I totally agree. Because I think there will be people who will be really strong in doing that. So, I mean, you always find people, right, who can do certain things.
It's playing to your strengths and letting someone else play to theirs. I think that's the idea behind that.
I love that concept. Yeah. Great.
So okay, you've got in your book here, there are 25 stories total, and they're all aimed. This is all aimed as advice to your younger self. I mean, do you have regrets about your path?
I don't have any regret where I would say, okay, I should have never done that. I mean, of course, I have a story in there. It's the Brazil story where I lost 90,000 euros in just a week. And I mean, 90,000 euros, so around 90,000, 100,000 US dollars. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is really a lot of money. For some people, it's not a lot of money. For me, it would still be a lot of money. It was huge. It was all the money I had back then.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, of course, I would love to still have that money. And I would love to not having lost that. And sure, I mean, but to me, it's not something that I would say, oh my gosh, this was the worst thing. Or, I mean, it was the only time in my life that I ever seriously thought about committing suicide because it was the lowest point of my life.
Yeah.
But if I really have something where I'd say, okay, I kind of wish that I would have done this a lot earlier. I wish that someone would have started teaching me proper finance a lot earlier. That is the one thing that I wish that when I was 18, 19 years old, that someone would have taken me aside and said, okay, Julian, this is how you do proper stock investing. This is how you should go towards real estate. This is how you should do these financial things. And to me, no one did that. So I had to find this out 10 years later. And the reason I think 10 years can be really a long time is because I see how powerful compounding is. And so that is maybe a bit of a regret, even though I wouldn't have been able to influence that. So I wish that today every high school kid gets this package of a toolbox where, I don't know, it's like Finance 101. And that would be maybe, you know what, talking about that would be a very good product idea, to be fair.
There you go, yeah. Yeah. Since you introduced it on my show, well, I'll just take a 10% cut of whatever you have. So, no, education, and not too many. Some people know this, but I have a master's in education. I taught for a few years, and I used to do educational design instruments and that sort of thing for ExxonMobil and companies like that. So education is one of these things that is kind of a hot button for me, and I get infuriated when I see what I consider weaknesses in that system. And I think that is one of them, is just the basic idea of how to manage money in general. I wish I'd been taught. I was not taught. So how did you come to learn yourself? I mean, was it just trial and error, or did you actually get into a course or something?
Sadly, the 90,000 euro was my trial.
That was your trial.
And basically, I mean, that's what the title or the chapter of the title of the chapter is. It's the 90,000 euro course. That's the title of the chapter. And basically I had to pay 90,000 euros to really wake up, to invest a lot of energy and then time into, reading books and going in for courses. And it, at the end, without losing so much money, I probably would have never taken it seriously, because it got me that much to the edge that I felt, okay, I never want to be that close to the edge anymore. And I think many people in their life, they always have this one incident where they feel like, okay, this really inspired me to do certain things. This motivated me because I never want to be back there. And and I think that was this big driver to me, where I started reading a lot of books. I think there's really great tools out there. I think just most people, they are not aware of them, or they don't have enough motivation to do it because they feel they don't need it. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So that is, I think, one of the key drivers for me, that you need to have the motivation. I was highly motivated to find solutions. I was really in debt because of that big loss, and I was hungry. I wanted to find it out, and I invested all the time. And I think for many kids, many teenagers, and that's why the book is also targeted for the age of 18 to 30, 33, 35, because I feel I can give value to them. I don't feel entitled to tell someone who's older than me or has more experience than me what to do in life. I don't feel entitled to that, but I definitely feel entitled that someone who is maybe fresh out of college, maybe just still in college, or maybe started working in their first job, to tell them, hey, listen, maybe take a step back and look at your life, understand where you're heading at the moment, because I've been there. I have gone through the same thing you're going through. Trust me. So I'm not saying you need to follow my footpath. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying be sure that the road you're on is the right road you want to be on. And the further down the road you go, the harder it is for you to step away from that angle. So that is a big part in this book.
Hey, we 43-year-olds need this kind of advice too, man. So don't discount us.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I agree. I mean, it's so funny, right? I have a lot of parents. I mean, my book is really targeted for 20, 25, maybe still 30, right? Mm-hmm. But so I have a lot of parents and who read this book. And the reason they read this book is they say, you know what? At first, I just wanted to understand my kid. I just wanted to understand how a millennial is ticking. And while I'm reading this, I'm like, wow, there's so much stuff that I can learn, right? But I don't feel entitled. I really don't feel entitled that I can tell someone that has more life experience or has gone through things that I have not gone through. And I do not feel entitled to tell people what to do. I really don't. And so that is why I'm really clear. I talk about stuff that I have a lot of experience in. And I mean, there's probably not that many people that have been kite surfing or have been a professional athlete, studied a high degree, and then didn't use either one of them, but did something completely different. Yeah. And I can explain it in clear words, and I am. And I think there's not one person after reading the book who says, "Oh, you're just an idiot." Yeah. But back then, everybody said I'm an idiot, and I think that's what it always comes down to.
Well, my grandfather always said the best way to give advice is to leave it where somebody can find it.
Wow, smart man.
He was a pretty smart man. So you mentioned earlier, like tools and resources. Do you have things that you recommend to people, tools and resources that you would, give to people to help them make this journey a little easier?
You mean like in books, or are you talking more about
books,
online resources, or
anything that you feel makes things easier for these guys your audience, the people reading your book? What would make things easier for them on this journey?
Sure. To me, everything starts with mindset. I mean, your mind is the most powerful tool. It's such a blunt saying, but I think it's so true. And so everything I try to start with is always the mindset. If the person can change the mindset, then the person can change everything. So it all starts with the proper mindset. And that's why I think reading the right things, listening to the right people, surrounding yourself with the right people, this is always the first thing that I try when I meet someone that wants coaching, is open for coaching, or wants to work with me, just wants to be a friend and wants to have some help. Mm-hmm. Then this is the first angle I always go to. To me, the books that I have recommended the most is, and I always start with the very basics, is to me, Think and Grow Rich. It's a very, very basic book. It's a very classic. I just think so many people haven't read it. And so I think this is a great place to start. And even though I'm not a great fan of Robert Kiyosaki per se, I think a lot of things he is teaching, in my opinion, are not that good. But his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Cash Flow Quadrant, they are, in my opinion, very great for proper mindset. I'm not talking about the details in there, but I'm talking about mindset. It's, to me, that was really mind-opening. And I think for many people that have not read that or have never heard of these concepts, and I'm really talking about raw concepts, not about the facts and details in there. I think they're really great. So these were probably the two books that I've recommended the most for people to read.
Yeah, those are good ones actually. They're on my. I have a sort of growing list. I need to make that public sometime. Just a growing list of books that I think are brilliant.
Definitely,
and those two are definitely on it. So, do you work with people directly? I mean, do you do like any kind of coaching, or you do some public speaking? I know that, right?
Yeah, so I've done, so actually last year when in November I stepped away from my last company, and that was how I made quite a lot of money. I was at first a bit lost because I felt, okay, so now I've achieved a lot and I didn't really know anymore what to do. I went from bankrupt to financially free in less than 4 years. And to me, that was or 5 years, that was pretty tough for me on a mental level, to be honest. And then when I recuperated from that, and I was in Thailand and I did a lot of inspiration for myself. And then I started doing these coaching sessions because I felt, okay, I have achieved something that I don't feel is anything special. I feel everyone could do it if they want to do it, first of all. And second of all, if they know how to do it. So it's like a maze, right? If you really want to get out of the maze, then all you need someone to show you the way. Mm-hmm. And so if you have someone, if you're really motivated and you have the way, then, I mean, you can do it. And so I started doing these coachings, and I did that for months, and it was wonderful and great. But then at some point I realized this is so unscalable. It's so difficult to touch a lot of people with this. And this is how the book actually got started this year, because there's people who said, Julian, your stories, when I think of your story, this is what gets me up in the morning. This is what motivates me. This is when I'm not at my job. This is why I'm in the evening still working on my second job, because I understand when my parents or my friends are against me doing that, I think about you quitting medicine because this is exactly, I understand what you talk about. And so that was the inspiration of actually writing the book, to scale, to touch more people. And from that also, I had a lot of talks. I did a lot of public speaking. I really enjoyed that. I feel that, personally, I feel that my writing is not as good as when I can verbally express myself. So, and I got this also as feedback. So also on Amazon, I had a lot of people who gave me, of course, 5-star reviews. And then I had people who I've never met, and they have never met me, I'm pretty sure. And they write that in their writing. They say, it's a wonderful book, excellent content. I give it a 4-star because your writing skills are not 5-star. And I totally fair enough. To me, I really think that's fair enough, right? I don't consider myself a best writer. Yes, I consider myself well selling, but I think my verbal skills are a lot better than my writing skills. And so I definitely love the public speaking. And that's actually the road I would love to go also for 2016.
Yeah. You have a strategy around that right now? You're working on more speaking engagements?
Yeah. So for 2016, we really, the book is more going to be the business card, if you want to call it. Mm-hmm. It's more of it was a great product and it's wonderful, but it's going to be replaced a bit more, first of all, by really good courses where I can verbally exchange scalable ideas through products that are more in a video style, more also podcasts. I would love to go more into podcasting. And then also the public speaking road, just because I feel that's where my true strength is rather than just the writing side.
Right. And you indie published this, right? Self-published this, right?
Yep, completely. I mean, I did it together with my girlfriend. So basically as the publisher on the book, it's as my girlfriend, Bettina Schmidt. Mm-hmm. She was the one who did everything when it came to the publishing side, all the logistics, all the printing. Here we're pretty fortunate because we got to print in China. We had a lot of pre-orders that we were able to do from China, and printing costs here are ridiculous low. Yeah. So that was really great. But then dealing with all the logistics and shipping and the cover design and all the layouts and all that. So my girlfriend did all that, and without her, that's her strength and that's my absolute weakness. Because to me, that's that boring. And again, you need to find someone who is good at what you hate doing, right? And I really like doing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people who have that same philosophy. I like cover design. I like all these pieces, so I'm fine with doing my own. But yeah, that's a strength. So, what made you decide that self-publishing was the route? Why not go with a traditional publisher?
Good question. To me, that was not the question. I think to me, it was, I get this asked really a lot, surprisingly, because to me, that was, I have a couple of advantages. First of all, I didn't inform myself one bit before I started writing. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to write a book. Okay. I didn't ask anyone. I didn't think about it. I didn't read about it. Probably had I read about all the pitfalls and all the problems and so on, I probably would have never started. I just started and I said, you know what, I'm going to write my book. And once it's finished, I'm going to go to the next step. And so to me, that was not even a question to look for a publisher. To me, at some point in July, I was finished. And then I said, okay, so I have a manuscript now. How are we going to go from here? And so it was never a question, actually. And I think many people, they overthink these things. I'm more the person, okay, let's figure it out along the way.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's me. And that's pretty much why I went with self-publishing. I don't know. I jumped in with both feet and it felt right. So I kept going. So do you think there are advantages to self-publishing over traditional publishing? I
mean, to me, looking back, I think it really depends on the group of people you have around yourself. If you really want to do this all by yourself, you have to bring a very diverse skill set, which I don't have. My skill set is, I'm definitely not the best writer per se. I can get my points across. I'm sure if I would have a ghostwriter that would spike up the English and would spike up the certain expressions, I had a really amazing editor, and without her, I probably would have totally screwed that up. But I'm definitely not the best writer. I consider myself 9.5 out of 10 points marketer. I'm really aggressive and hardcore there. But I had some extremely talented people around me who were able to make my team perfect. And I had a really amazing editor. I had my girlfriend who was wonderful with all the publishing side. I think you really have to consider certain things where you're like, okay, which way would you see yourself better in? Are you good at surrounding yourself with great people? Or are you more this kind of person who says, okay, I really only want to do the writing, and then I'm just going to get a lot of the stuff away without me having to bother for this. And then in return, I'm willing to take a very low cut, because if you're having another publisher, your income is, writing a book is not a very profitable thing anyways, but with a publisher, you're just getting squeezed.
That's true. It kind of comes back to your advice earlier about you'd rather have 10% of $1 million. It's kind of the same idea. Like, I'd rather invest my time, energy, and money in marketing the book and take, whatever percentage, 70% of the book or whatever, than take like 3%. So, and be told how it's going to be written and that sort of thing.
You're totally right, Kevin. I think it's the exact right attitude. And again, there's no right or wrong here, right? I think, I met with a couple of authors after I was kind of finished, and it was more about some fine tuning. Right. And some of these authors, they had a professional publisher here in Hong Kong that they were working with also in the US, and they were super happy with this. Right. And I probably would have been totally unhappy with the deal they got.
Yeah.
And for example, this is just a quick side note. I wrote a kitesurfing book when I was still professional kitesurfing, and it's one of the most successful kitesurfing books. And there I used the publisher just because, to me, in kitesurfing, that makes absolutely sense, just because it was a really different logistic task. But the income that I get there is, like you said, is 3% of the entire sales. Right. This is ridiculously low. If I would make the same kind of cut that I'm making here with my regular book, oh my gosh, because we sold so many books, right? It's just that, of course, I would have never sold that many books without the publisher. So it comes down to what you want, right? You have to kind of compare your options there and weigh the up and downsides.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, all right, well, we're at our time. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up and let you get back to your regularly scheduled life. But I've really appreciated you being here, man. This has been kind of inspirational. I'm going to have to go through your book. And just for full disclosure to the audience, I didn't get to read the book in advance because you and I, we connected like maybe 5 days ago, I think, right? So
yep.
So,
yeah, it's very short term.
Yeah, but I have the book. It's on my Kindle. I'm actually I'm going to start reading it as soon as I can. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of great advice out of it. And you, listener, can also get a lot of great advice out of it. You can visit Julian and learn more about the book, about his speaking engagements, about a whole lot of things at his website, and on his website at 25stories.org. That's the number 25stories.org, and you'll have links to that in the show notes. You can also find links to his book where you can go purchase it. If you're in the U.S., I don't know about worldwide, but in the U.S., you can actually get this on Kindle Unlimited if that's something you subscribe to, which I do. So, and I'll have links to Facebook, Twitter, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, Julian, I really appreciate you being on the show, and I'm looking forward to. I'm going to chat with you again soon if you don't mind. I'm going to get in touch. We'll just trade barbs every now and then.
I would love to do that, Kevin. It was a pleasure, and hey, it was really great to be on.
All right, thank you, and thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for the wrap up, and I'll see you next week. Well, that was Julian Hosp, and that was that's one of the inspirational interviews for me. I mean, and it's because of what he actually did. I mean, it's what he pulled off, and what he went through to do it. We all, I think at one point or another, we all end up sort of facing opposition from the people in our lives in pursuing what it is we want to do, and I sort of hate the advice of chase your passion. The more I read about this and the more I experience it and the more I talk to people, I realize that passion is not actually enough for sort of a career motivator. I mean, it's just not going to be enough to drive you through. It's enough to keep you going when things get tough, but it's not a business plan. So, that said, I have great admiration for people who do decide this is something I'm interested in enough that I want to do it for a living. And so they rearrange their lives so that they can pursue that passion. And I think that's the key to that story. So let me boil that down in a nutshell. If your passion is to write books for a living, to be a fiction author, as an example, that passion alone isn't going to cut it for making your living. There's a lot of work that has to go into it. So you rearrange your life so that it can support that passion. And, I recently read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and there's an idea in there that I really resonated with, which is sometimes we ask a little bit much of our art and our passion. Sometimes we expect our art to make our living for us, to pay our living. And that's a huge demand to place on something that was meant to be, an extension of ourselves and our, how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about life and, a way that we express ourselves. So sometimes maybe you should reconsider. This is not to discourage anybody. I'm actually trying to make a more inspirational point here. But the idea is, if you are struggling with your passion and you're not able to figure out how to make a living from that passion, maybe you should consider hunting up a career that will just allow you to pursue that passion deeper. And that could be, working for someone else while you do this work on the side. I recently interviewed Jason Arsamont. That was last week's interview, actually. And if you listen to that show, he talks about how, if you are even if you were picking up trash for a living, as long as it's supporting what you want out of life, as long as it's providing you with the type of life you're after, the lifestyle that you're after, then you're probably going to be pretty happy. So I think I've experienced that. I've seen that with a lot of people I know. So that's meant to be encouraging because there are definitely people who are out there making a living with their art and with their passion. I know a lot of authors who are making a full-time living from their books. I know a lot of artists. I know a lot of photographers. There's absolutely nothing wrong with hanging up a shingle and going out and pursuing that work. I think, though, that a lot of people put too high a demand and too high an expectation on that work and that art, and so they end up becoming bitter about it and sad about it because their expectation is, I have to make this work or I'm not living my dream. And what I'm trying to tell you is that you can live your dream even if it means working for Starbucks or working for, the corporation you work for or working for anyone else. You can go out and create what you want. What you need to concentrate on is, what is the lifestyle I'm trying to live and what will support that lifestyle. There's a kind of fine line there, but I'm hoping you get that. And if you don't, feel free to call me and ask me. I will talk to you at length. We'll work out the best way for you to pursue a career that involves your passion or otherwise how you can get to what you want in life. We'll do that. So that said, and as we wrap up, be sure to check out that special on 30 Day Author. You can get that online. If you go to kevintumlinson.com/30dayauthor, you'll find it. If you go to wordslingerpodcast.com, which is the website for this show, it takes you to the same place essentially, but you can click on books and scroll down. You'll find 30 Day Author there if it's a little easier for you to do that. And I'd love for you to check that out. 99 cents is a spectacular deal on that book right now, so go give it a shot. And let me know what you think. Also, if you'd like to leave any comments or ask any questions for the show, you can call me, 281-809-WORD. That's 281-809-9673. I'd be thrilled if you called and left a voicemail that I could play on the air and ask me any questions you like. You can also email me or contact me from the website itself. Just go to wordslingerpodcast.com. You can click contact and email me. You can send me a voicemail. I've gotten some really interesting comments and voicemails, or not voicemails, but emails lately. And I want to thank in particular a listener, Roland Denzel, who is we're becoming friends, and I'm probably going to have this guy on the show at some point. He's got a remarkable story to tell as well. I'm going to save the specifics of that, but he sent me a very kind email to let me know that how much he enjoys the show. He doesn't think the quality has dropped at all since I've moved from the studio to a portable setup. He was very encouraging about the whole RV lifestyle we're about to embark on. So I just want to thank you, Roland. That was a great email. It came in at a great time. I've gotten numerous emails from people who heard my interview on the Joanna Penn Creative Pen podcast, and too many really for me to start naming, but you're all awesome. I know many of you said you were going to be tuning in to listen to this show now, so welcome. I love having you here. Help me out. I've got a request. If you will go and review the show on iTunes and Stitcher, it will help me a tremendous amount. So go do that. Go rate me. 4 or 5 stars would be perfect. And the reviews are also very helpful. So thank you for helping support the show and make it discoverable to other listeners. And that's pretty much going to be it. I'm going to wrap up now. So because we're coming up on an hour, and you know how I can go on. So I hope you're having a great new year. I hope you're enjoying what life has brought you so far. I want to work with you to make something incredible happen over 2016. I just have this sense that 2016 is going to be an explosive banner year. I don't know what's really triggering this in me, but I just feel it. So many wonderful and positive things are happening. I've got a new project in the works that I think you're going to really dig. I will make announcements about that in the near future. If you are not already, I'd love it if you tune into the Creative Writing Career podcast and the Self-Publishing Answers podcast. If you're a writer, or if you're interested in a career in writing at all, even if you don't want to write books but would rather write screenplays or something along those lines, these are great resources, so go check those out. And that is going to be it for this week. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.
Word Slinger.